What's up, guys? It's three-time NFL Pro Bowler, all-decade return specialist, Josh Cribbs. I want to welcome you to the College Sports Connection podcast, where Double A, Alex, and AJ host the Mid-American Conference Best.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the College Sports Connection podcast. I'm your host, Alex the Captain. Joining me, as always, it's AJ the Guru.
What's going on, everybody?
AJ, welcome back. We are now moving into part two of our bowl kind of preview, our bowl season, whatever it is. We've got 3 bowl games we've covered with 3 MAC teams. We've got 3 more to go on the docket. We've got a pretty good schedule here. The last of our bowl games that we've got from the last docket. So we had the Bahamas Bowl with Miami and UAB. We have the Eastern Michigan taking on San Jose State in the Potato Bowl, and then Toledo taking on Liberty in the Boca Raton Bowl. But now we've got a few other bowl games that we got to talk about. Mm-hmm. It's a good second half slate, if I guess we can call it a second half slate. We've got Bowling Green heading up to Detroit day after Christmas to take on New Mexico State in the Quick Lane Bowl. We've got Buffalo on 12/27 taking on Georgia Southern and their former quarterback Kyle Vantrease. In that, we'll get into that here in a minute, but I'm really excited about that one. That's in the Camilla Bowl. And then last but not least, we've got Ohio taking on Wyoming in the Arizona Bowl presented by Barstool. So I really like this second half slate. I love the first half slate, obviously, but this second half slate, there's some interesting storylines here. Let's dive into these bowl games we haven't talked about, these teams we have not talked about up to this point. It's our second half slate, as I mentioned, and I tell you what, I've got all 3 of these circled on my calendar. I think I'm almost most interested in this Camilla Bowl, but let's start with Ford Field, the Motor City Bowl, it's had a million names. The Little Caesars Pizza Bowl, the Motor City Bowl, the Quick Lane Bowl, Bowling Green 6-6 taking on New Mexico State 6-6. Initial thoughts: the over/under is 48 points. The line is BG negative 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
This one should be interesting. New Mexico is not. I've not been impressed with them, just based off of some of their results and whatnot.
Sure, you look at this game. Western has played in this game, Central has played in this game, Eastern has played in this game, and so has Northern Illinois. And Western's the only MAC team to win the Quick Lanes Bowl, which we were at last year against Nevada, which was a lot of fun. But yeah, this is a game that's going to be great for BG because it is close to home. It was the same case for Western last year. We saw, Nevada, that's a haul for them to come to Detroit, but Western had a phenomenal crowd there last year. It was 20-some thousand people there. The stadium was electric, and I expect it to be the same for BG going into that game, being only an hour trip for the Falcon fans.
Well, I was going to say this is a pretty close game. This is basically a home game if you're Bowling Green.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think looking at it, I don't think Bowling Green has any reason to have less than, I'm going to say, 10,000 fans.
Mm-hmm.
Like they really shouldn't. This is a team who has not been bowling since 2015. Haven't won a bowl game since 2014. They're starved for postseason something.
Right.
I think these fans are going to show out. Or at least I hope they do, and I say that obviously for the sake of the conference. I say that with a lot of, hey, this is a home game for you guys. There's some cool stuff in this one. This is Matt McDonald's official last game as a Bowling Green Falcon. I saw that on Twitter the other day that he's not going to appeal to the NCAA for an extra year. I think there's an opportunity for him to, based off of some red shirt stuff. I'm not entirely sure.
A COVID year, probably.
COVID year, good chance on that as well. But there's an opportunity for him to potentially appeal for that. He's decided not to, and now Bowling Green is, well, they're 1 win away from having their first winning season since 2015, and 7 years is a long time.
It really is.
To not have a winning season.
It is. And, Matt McDonald in the year, he's really surprised us too. 22 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions, 2,639 yards. Now, did I read it that his brother plays for New Mexico State?
That's new information to me.
There's a relative. You can keep talking. I'm going to look into this.
Yeah.
Because there is a relative of a BG player who plays at New Mexico State.
Okay.
Let me see here.
So I think, as you're looking that up, I think it's interesting. BG and BG's playing New Mexico State, who is an independent in the FBS. Toledo is also playing an independent in Liberty, which we've discovered, or which we talked about last week. So I find it interesting that the MAC is getting some of these intriguing non-conference opponents in bowl games. But here, just taking a little bit closer look at the stats, Bowling Green's offense is averaging almost 24 points a game, averaging almost 340 yards a game, 236.5 yards passing, 100 yards rushing. The thing that's going to get Bowling Green in trouble is they are giving up 33.5 points a game, so almost 10 more points a game per contest. And the yardage is where they really, really get into trouble. 420 yards a game, allowing 257.5 through the air, and a bruising 163 on the ground. And that's kind of the tail right there. For New Mexico State, they're averaging 25.5 points a game. They're allowing 24.3 points a game. Total yards for New Mexico State on offense, almost 325. And it's a pretty balanced attack. They're averaging 170 through the air, 155 on the ground. And their yards allowed about 80 yards less than Bowling Green, 183 through the air, 155 on the ground. I think, and I'm looking at this New Mexico schedule. So they played Valparaiso, an FCS level program.
Mm-hmm.
They played Valparaiso, the Beacons, at home in order to secure bowl eligibility. Their previous week, the last game of the regular season, they played Liberty to pretty handily. I'm actually looking at this pretty handily, 49-14. And I'm thinking this is really interesting. So, per NCAA rules, a team cannot count 2 FCS wins.
FCSs, yep. Because that happened to somebody last year too.
But New Mexico State can, and here's why. They had a game on October 22nd that was postponed, effectively canceled. We know how that postponed thing works. Against San Jose State, who's taking on Eastern Michigan in the Potato Bowl. They had a game against San Jose State that was postponed. And the NCAA is allowed for them to apply for, or it was allowed them to schedule a game against Valparaiso, and is, because of the game against San Jose State, is allowing them to use that for bowl eligibility. They were 5-6 prior to that Valparaiso game, and they needed that game to become bowl eligible. And that is the one instance in which the NCAA I've seen allow that. So and it says right here, each team was granted a waiver by the NCAA. Valparaiso was allowed to exceed their FCS limit of 11 regular season games, and the Aggies were allowed to count both of their wins over FCS teams towards bowl eligibility.
Gotcha. So
that's wild.
I figured out. Right. And I figured out the Matt McDonald thing. His brother was a quarterback for New Mexico State in 2013.
Okay. I was going to say that's news to me. That's
Because it's on his Twitter, December 26th, McDonald Bowl, and it's a picture of his brother back in the day and a picture of him.
Okay.
That's what it
Okay.
was. Yep.
Okay. Well, there we have that answer. But so I'm looking at these results for New Mexico State. They had a pretty rough first half of their schedule. They lost their first 4 games to Nevada, at Minnesota, at UTEP, at Wisconsin. They come back and they beat Hawaii at home. They lose to Florida International at home. They beat New Mexico at home. They start to kind of get into a little bit of a rhythm. The San Jose State game canceled. They go and win at UMass. They beat Lamar at home. The Lamar Cardinals,
Mm-hmm.
who apparently they finished 1-10. They looked terrible this year. Missouri, they lose at Missouri. They they win at Liberty, and then they win again at win at home against Valparaiso. And then looking at what Bowling Green's done, Bowling Green has been such a weird team, and we've talked about this so much. Bowling Green's results have been a closer than expected loss at UCLA, a bruising loss at home in 7 overtimes against Eastern Kentucky, a win at home against Marshall, a loss on the road to Mississippi State without Matt McDonald. Matt McDonald was not playing in that game due to an injury. A 3-point win at Akron, a blowout loss at home to Buffalo. Then they rip off 3 straight wins against Miami, Ohio, at Central Michigan, and at home against Western Michigan, a game I was in attendance for. They get blown out by Kent State. They respond by beating Toledo in the Glass Bowl. And then they get blown out again by Ohio. It seems like Bowling Green was one of those teams, ugly loss, respond with a big win.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been the tale of their year, and I can back this up. Loss at home against EKU, respond at home by beating Marshall. Loss on the road, or loss at home versus Buffalo, respond by beating Miami, Ohio. Blowout loss versus Kent State, win at Toledo. Loss at Ohio, I think the script's kind of saying, hey, maybe there's a win on the horizon here for the Falcons.
Sure. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think, they have had that roller coaster of a season where it's been pretty unpredictable, but it's also one of those things too where, I mean, like guys like Matt McDonald, for example, they have nothing to lose. It's their last game. Go out and ball out, and it's like we talked about earlier. It's essentially a home game. It's gonna feel like you're playing at Doit Stadium, but just in a dome
Minus
where
the
it's nice and
temperature.
warm. Yeah, minus, exactly. You're in a dome. But we've been up there. We've been to Detroit many times. We've seen some great games. They're going to put on a great atmosphere. It'll be fun overall for the players and fans. And I'm curious as what they're kind of. I think leading up to the game, they do like a bowling game, a match between the two teams.
Yeah, they do bowling. They have different bowl game activities between the
So I think it'll
teams.
be fun. So
And
what's your prediction?
Matchup predictor has it in favor of Bowling Green, 51.9% to New Mexico State. Sorry, 48.1%. This one's tough. Bowling Green's been such a wild card this year that I've gotta say I like the Falcons in this game if they can come out and start swinging early the way they did against Toledo. They come out and they start swinging early and often. I think Bowling Green not only wins this game, but runs away with it. If New Mexico State comes out, kind of punches them in the mouth a little bit, because they've got, again, similar to what you were talking about, they've got nothing to really lose at this point. It could be a different game. I do think there's going to be some emotion behind it being Matt McDonald's final game as a Falcon. So I think he'll be playing a little bit more inspired for his final game in the brown and orange. I'm going to go, and Bowling Green fans, I want you to hear, I am picking you for this prediction. I'm going to go Bowling Green 33, New Mexico State 27.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be my prediction for this game.
Yeah. I'm kind of looking at this too, same way. I'm taking BG. I'm taking BG 28-14.
28-14. Okay. Okay. So you're really picking the Falcons to come out and blow the doors off this thing.
I think they get ahead late, or excuse me, I think they get ahead early, but maybe taper off a little bit and then start relying on their defense a little bit more than they maybe would hope so, or
Okay.
hope to. Because they have one of the top defenses they have the top 7 defense in the country when it comes to sacks.
Yeah, I mean they've got an excellent pass rush, and that defensive line is absolutely nasty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried about their ability to stop the pass. Even in their win over Toledo, I'm going to pull up numbers from that here real quick. But even in that win over Toledo, Tucker Gleason still had a game. Tucker Gleason threw for 329 yards and 3 touchdowns on him.
Mm-hmm.
And then their ability to stop the run is, it's hit or miss. I think their run game their run stop is pretty decent. Tucker Gleason still ran for 106 yards and 2 scores. So, I mean, do I think New Mexico State is as high powered as Toledo? Absolutely not. I do think that Bowling Green gets in these rhythms where they kind of up and down, up and down, up and down. And so it'll be interesting. I do think that both of us are correct. Falcons are going to win this one. But I think it's going to be a good game. It's there's a lot riding on this one. I think for Coach Leffler, getting a bowl win in year 4 would be huge. This is a program, again, who's been starved for a winning season since 2015. We're talking the Mike Jinks, the Dino Babers, just all those eras of Bowling Green football that went from being great to not so great. And, this would be good for Bowling Green. It'd be good for the MAC to get this win. So Bowling Green, you're taking them 28-14. Mm-hmm. I'm taking them 33-27 in what should be a pretty fantastic bowl game. I'm really excited to be up there, and I will be up there on the day after Christmas. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Next one, we've got the Camilla Bowl. Georgia Southern taking on Buffalo. Oh,
this one's gonna be a fun one. Obviously, we're all very familiar with Kyle Vantrease, what he did at Buffalo. He obviously transferred this past season down to Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern went to Nebraska and beat Nebraska on a last-second field goal, but have kind of tapered off towards the back end of the year, finishing the season 6-6, the same as Buffalo. Buffalo needed that makeup game against Akron to become bowl eligible. The game they played the weekend of the MAC championship because of the snow. It was in Buffalo a few weeks prior. Georgia Southern, they were on -3.5. This is on Tuesday, the 27th. This one could be fun. It could be interesting. But you kind of like the matchup predictor. It is in the favor of Georgia Southern, 57% to 42%. Kyle Vantrease, as I mentioned on the year, he's 25 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. Cole Snyder, 17 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's been injured on and off this year. We didn't get to see him play when we were up there. It was Myers, right?
I'm trying to think.
It wasn't Snyder.
No, it was.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, Snyder had 300 yards that game.
That's right. Okay.
Taylor Powell. You're thinking the Eastern Michigan quarterback.
I'm thinking of Powell. That's right. So yeah, and this one could be fun. Buffalo does not have a 1,000-yard rusher. Georgia Southern has a rusher, White, who's at 914 on the year with 10 touchdowns. Washington for Buffalo, 606 yards, 7 touchdowns. This could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, this one obviously you mentioned Kyle Vantrease, his 25 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. That's all well and good. The number that I've got highlighted here on my stat sheet, almost 4,000 yards on the year.
Mm-hmm.
So then you look at the record and you're like, how are they 6-6? So then you start taking a closer look. On offense, they're averaging a blistering 468 yards per game. They're averaging 327 through the air, 140 on the ground. Defensively, they are leaking like a sieve. 496 yards, almost 500 yards that they are surrendering to opponents. 256 passing, 240 on the ground. So if a team can run and establish any kind of run game, you're going to beat Georgia Southern. Looking a little bit closer at their games they played this year. So they played Morgan State, whatever, FCS level program. They beat Nebraska at Nebraska. Kyle Vantrease had 409 passing yards. They lose to UAB on the road. They beat Ball State at home in what was a pretty decent game for a while.
Yeah.
They lose to Coastal Carolina and Georgia State. Then they beat ranked James Madison, which was weird. But then their last 3 losses, they lose 3 out of their last 4 versus South Alabama, at Louisiana, a blowout loss at Louisiana, and then a loss to Marshall, who lost to Bowling Green,
who won today.
It doesn't make sense. And again, this is what I love about college football. This is the parity. You and I've talked about this ad nauseum, right? This parity that is so beautiful. But when they beat Appalachian State, 389 passing yards from Kyle Vantrease, and they needed that win to get bowl eligible. That was a double overtime win. So I think Georgia Southern is one team that is really, really just have been hit or miss. Conversely, Buffalo was the team who they started off with 3 straight losses, a loss at Maryland, an ugly loss at home versus Holy Cross, who went pretty far in the FCS playoffs to their credit, but you still shouldn't lose that game. And then a loss at Coastal Carolina, a game that was a pretty solid game for a while. This is the common opponent, Coastal Carolina. Georgia Southern lost to them 34-30 at Coastal. Yeah. Buffalo lost to them 38-26. Coin flip here for Buffalo. That's a 1-score game. Coin flip for Georgia Southern. That's a 2-score game. So really fairly even matched. But then Buffalo comes back in and rips off 5 straight wins. Eastern Michigan, Miami, Bowling Green, UMass, Toledo. And they're in the driver's seat for the MAC East, lose to Ohio, lose at Central Michigan in a weird loss. Yeah. The Akron game gets postponed. They lose at Kent State to Kent State in overtime. And then, like you said, they needed the Akron win. And this Akron game, I watched it. I watched part of it, during lunch break or whatever at work. This Akron game was ugly. I was getting score updates.
Yeah, that was bad.
Buffalo really had no business winning this game.
No.
Akron jumps out to a 16-10 lead. I think Akron actually went up 16-0.
I think so, something like that, yeah.
In the first half. Yeah, they went up 16-0 in the first half. Buffalo brings it back down 16-10. And then they obviously they end up winning it late. But this was a game that, man, which is just an ugly back and forth. And Akron has done nothing but improve on the year. So I don't want to discount what Akron's done and what they've kind of have started to do under Joe Moorhead. But Buffalo looked really good, or looked really rough early, looked really hot in the middle of the season, cooled way off at the end of the season. Same story for them. They needed that last win of the regular season to become bowl eligible. All that being said, I think I like Georgia Southern in this one. I know Matchup Predictor has it heavy in their favor, but I think I like Georgia Southern. Spread is 3.5 points, over under 67.5. I'm going to go this one 38-24 in favor of Georgia Southern.
Yeah, I'm taking Georgia Southern as well for the simple fact that I like Kyle Vantrease. He's had a great year. We weren't really sure what was going to happen because I think we were all kind of surprised that when he announced he was going to transfer. We were all really surprised about that, but he's found a good home, Georgia Southern. I'm also going to take Georgia Southern in this one. What'd you say? Your score prediction?
I'm going 34. or 38-24.
38-24. I'm probably going to go 28-17.
28-17. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, as much as I love what Buffalo's done and how they got to a bowl game, I think that they are going to be outmatched in this one.
Yeah.
It's not going to be one of those bowl games where they win this one, and that's okay. But I do think that this is one that they are severely outmatched and do not compete and do not win the Camilla Bowl. This is going to be all Georgia Southern, and it's gonna get ugly for a while, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Last game of the 2022 bowl slate for the Mid-American Conference. Arguably the best team in the MAC, and I say arguably because they did not win the Mid-American Conference. We've got Ohio taking on Wyoming at the Barstool Arizona Bowl. This one's going to be a lot of fun.
I think so. This was one that, it's kind of, I think this is going to be the highlight of the MAC bowl season. For the simple fact that, you look at OU losing Curtis Rourke, having a backup, we really, 2 weeks before or for the bowl MAC championship, really. So he didn't have a ton of time to get prepared. He'll have a month essentially to get ready for this one. And OU didn't play horrendously in the MAC championship. It was a low scoring game on both sides. So you really look at OU, they're favored in this one, aren't they?
Yeah, their matchup predictor has it 54% in favor of Ohio. It is a 1-point spread. Ohio -1, over under 43 points. This one's they've got this one predicted kind of odd. This one feels like it's going to be a low scoring affair, but I don't think it will be.
Right. And Wyoming has that thing too where they love playing MAC schools too. It's not the first time it's ever happened. But they're going to be out sunny Arizona. That'd be a lot of fun. I think Coach Albion has the Bobcats trending in the right direction. Last year they came out, they had 1 or 2 wins last season. They turned it around entirely this season, having gone to Detroit, losing to Toledo in a close one, and having won the most games in the conference. They won 9 games, something like that. And so I really think that OU is trending in the right direction at the right time.
Yeah, I think OU is moving the right direction at the right time. You look at their schedule, right? You look at what they've done this year. They went on a tear in the Mid-American Conference. Unfortunately, their conference record was bookended by losses, a loss at Kent State, a game in which really, when we had Russ Eisenstein on the show and Rob Cornelius talking about this game in our MAC championship preview, this is a game that I think Ohio really probably could have won and probably should have won. Curtis Rourke still had one heck of a day, 322 passing yards. Sabangira had 100 rushing yards. But this just ended up being a banner day for the Kent State athletes. A lot of these guys broke into the record books. Colin Schlee, Marquise Cooper, Dante Cephas, all of them broke into the top 10 of school record books for that day in a game that ended 31-24. So it was a great, great football game for both teams. But looking at what Ohio has done this year, in their wins, they score and they score a lot. Against FAU at home, they won 41-38. At Penn State and Illinois State or Iowa State both, they only scored 10, but they responded with a win against Fordham, 58-52. At Akron, or at home versus Akron, they won 55-34. At Western Michigan, 33-14. The Northern Illinois game was a little shaky. They won that one 24-17. Buffalo, they blew them out 45-24. Miami, Ohio, battle for the bricks, 37-21. At Ball State, they beat them 32-18. This was the game in which Curtis Rourke got hurt and was taken out for the year. And then against Bowling Green, 38-14, a blowout in the de facto MAC East championship game. And then they laid almost an egg against Toledo in the MAC championship, 17-10. I really, really think you are spot on with CJ Harris. This kid is going to have an opportunity to kind of learn the ropes and get comfortable. This is a kid who has now had time to figure out how to play football in this system. And so I think with that time, understanding schemes a little bit better, CJ Harris has done great. No discredit to him whatsoever, but he's one of those guys who I think he just needs that. He needs that experience. He needs a little bit more prep time. And so he got the game against Bowling Green, in which, you were able to kind of ride the defense on that one a little bit, and the ground game on that one. Then you run up against the best defense in the MAC in Toledo. I do think that they're going to come out and they're going to play tough. They're going to play hard. Wyoming doesn't look bad either. I'm looking at some of these scores here, and I'm looking at their standings. They finished 5-3 in the Mountain West, the Mountain Division. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but the Mountain West Conference, this is such a weird thing, and no disrespect to the Mountain West, but their divisions are Mountain and West.
Yep.
That is so wild to me. I've never seen anything like that before. That'd be like calling the Big Ten the Big Division and the 10 Division.
Well, it's better than Leaders and Legends.
Don't get me started on Leaders and Legends.
Right. But I mean, heck, remember I get all Mountain West news out here, so
that's true. Yeah, so you've heard that already.
Oh yeah, I do Air Force and they're Mountain West as well. So
fair enough. So, but yeah, I'm just looking at this and I'm like, that's just so wild to me. But this Wyoming team isn't bad. A loss on the road at Illinois, but they beat Tulsa. They beat University of Northern Colorado. They beat Air Force. They've got a relatively close loss to BYU. A 3-point loss to conference champion Boise State. Sorry, no, they didn't win the conference, did they? They just won the Mountain Division, didn't they?
Yeah.
I think that's what happened.
Yes, sounds right.
Yeah, they lost to Fresno State 28-16.
Yep.
But I mean they've got good wins against great teams and some close losses against other great teams. So I mean this is going to be an interesting matchup. I like Ohio in this one. I'm taking the Bobcats 9-4. They've got a good defense. Yeah, I'm just looking at numbers here. Points per game. Ohio scoring 32 points a game, giving up 28. Total yards. Ohio is blasting teams with 425 yards a game. 285 of those passing, 140 of those rushing. I'm sure those numbers will be a little bit skewed with CJ Harris, but their yards allowed is where they get into trouble. They allow almost 300 yards a game passing, 143 yards rushing. Wyoming, they are very much more a bend don't break kind of team, and offensively they don't move the ball as well, it seems. A whole 11 points less than Ohio at 20.8 points per game that they surrender. They do give up more than they score, 23.4. Total yards 315, with a pretty balanced attack, a little bit heavier on the run side, almost 190 to 130 rushing. And then their yards allowed 370 a game. Passing is a problem. They allow about 220 a game, about 150 on the ground. To me, I think the answer is obvious. Ohio's going to want to respond. They have an absolute opportunity at a 10-win season, something that they haven't done in quite a while.
Yeah.
This is a good opportunity for them to rebound, to prepare for next season and to go into next season with a lot of momentum.
Sure.
So, who are you taking?
But yeah, I'm with you. I like OU in this one. I like C. Bangora, who's a guy who's in the conference who was overshadowed by Carson Steele when it came to running,
Sure.
rushing the ball. I like C. Bangora a lot. He's said with an inexperienced quarterback, they're going to have to lean on him a lot. Look at that Sam Wiglis, the transfer from Ohio State. He only had 1 or 2 receptions in the MAC championship, which was really surprising because he was one of the top receivers in the conference this year.
He was Ohio's top receiver on the year.
Yeah, and one of the top in the conference. So I really think it's gonna start with the run game, and that run game's gonna open up the pass game because it'll give Harris a little more confidence. Taking snaps in a bowl game, which he's obviously never done. So I do like OU in this one. This is one of those ones where I think it's gonna be like a close 28-24 type of game.
I like 28-24. I do. I think Ohio gets their offense going. I think we're seeing something closer to that of what we saw against Bowling Green against Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that the offense does take a step back solely because cadences are different for CJ Harris. So there's going to be misfires on this offense. That being said, I'm gonna say this is a lower scoring game. And I'm gonna go probably not lower scoring than what you just picked at 27-24. But I'm gonna go 30-21.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna be my matchup prediction in favor of the Bobcats.
Right. Yeah, I think, it could be interesting because we just don't know. We don't watch Wyoming. We don't. I get highlights of them.
I was going to say,
news
that's
here.
your job now that you're out there. You know that, right?
I know. I get highlights of them every once in a while. But with the way Air Force played this year, they take up all. Air Force is the best football team in the state of Colorado right now.
Sure.
So, yeah, they kind of take up most of the news space out here. But nevertheless, this should be a fun one.
Yeah, I like this matchup for Ohio. I think it's again a good test. They were one of the worst teams in the MAC last year, and now we're getting to see them play and compete in a pretty good bowl game. I think it's slowly becoming. I know there's no real pecking order anymore for bowl games, minus the New Year's Six and obviously the college football playoffs. But this is a pretty good bowl game in terms of advertisement revenue, things like that.
Sure. Ball State won it the original year, I think, didn't they?
The Ball State won it the year it was the first year it was the Barstool Bowl, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Against San Jose State.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's just a lot. There's a lot with this one.
It'll be fun either way, though. We got a great slate of games starting tomorrow with Eastern Michigan. We got 2 tomorrow, Eastern Michigan and Toledo. And then we get into the games here after Christmas, which is already coming up. It's hard to believe Christmas got here so fast. We haven't done any of my decorating yet.
Yeah, got to get on that.
Exactly.
Well, cool, man. That's I think that's going to about do it for us. Great slate of games here to finish out the year for the Mid-American Conference, and then our gear shifts over to basketball and hockey as you're going to be covering some stuff going out there. Our gear's going to shift a little bit as we start to already look at the MAC basketball championship the week of March 9th through the 11th up at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse up in Cleveland. And it's all systems go. Things are just flying along.
We're moving right along.
So cool. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
See you.